Hey, folks. Awesome. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. All right. Those of you who have your videos on, do me a favor and give me a thumbs up if you can hear me loud and clear. Okay, I can see. Super. Thank you. Reina, you got thumbs up, you got the okay sign, you got everything. Love it. Thank you. Awesome. All right, we're just going to give people maybe another minute or so to join. But in the meantime, we're not going to stay idle till then. We've got a variety of people, some familiar names, some not so familiar names, some new names that will be familiar over time. Give me a second, please. Hope you can see my screen. Again, awesome. Love the feedback. Would love to know where you all are joining from. So do me a favor and just put it in the chat, in the Zoom chat itself. There's nothing else you need to do. Just type in the Zoom chat as to where you're joining from. And I'm going to see it up here, pop up here on the screen. Okay, we got Joe from Chicago. Welcome, Joe. Who else do we have? We got Manish in Mumbai. We've got a few people in India. Okay. We've got Nilina in Chennai. Hey, Nilina, thanks for joining us. We've got Colin from London. Welcome, Colin. Thank you. It's what, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon for you? Good time for a cup of tea. Cheers. What else do we have? We got a few more people here in the US. Oh, we got people on the East Coast as well. We've got some folks. We got Reina from Cambridge. Hey, and thank you for the feedback, Reina. Hari from Virginia. Hey, Hari. Joe. Nirupa, I thought you would be in Jersey, but you certainly get around. Good to have you again. And we've got a few more folks joining us, and we're going to kick it off in a bit. Give them a second to tell us where they're joining from. If you just joined us, just type in the chat as to where you're joining from. We've got 3 continents covered at this time in the map. And at some point, my personal aim is to try and see if we can get every single continent covered out there. But we'll get there. We got Asia, we got Europe, and we've got North America. Oh, we got people in okay, that counts as Asia. We got someone in Singapore. That's Vamsi. Hey, Vamsi. And I look forward to having folks from the Southern Hemisphere. I think Singapore just about qualifies in the Northern Hemisphere. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you over here. Mind is all over the world. That certainly counts. Yes. and as you've seen, you've got a flavor that this is not going to be your typical presentation. And you might know that if you've attended any of our previous sessions. But if you haven't, here's a heads up. We love to listen more than we speak. So you're going to help me make this an amazing session for all of us together by participating as you beautifully have been doing so far. It's going to be cacophony if you get everyone to put their mics on. So we're not going to do that. You're going to be participating through the chat as you did, right? So just going to give you a little more practice besides, typing where you're joining from. I'm going to ask you a few questions just to set the context and understand, really get a sense of where folks are. So just one word, how you're feeling today, which is almost like the obligatory question here in the States. And it took me a long time to figure out that it's a rhetorical question because you're allowed only 4 answers in the US when someone asks you how you're feeling today. You have to say great, you have to say awesome, you have to say fine, or you got to say amazing. You can't say anything else. But it's great to see anticipatory, upbeat, curious, excited. Super. Okay. That kind of sums up how I'm feeling about it as well. So it's great to see this wall of positivity kind of spring up from what you're putting out there. So again, thank you so much for participating. This is beautiful, right? I've got a few more questions. So don't relax those fingers yet. We're going to give you all the exercise that you can get with those fingers. Got a few more questions for you. All answers are fine. It can be as weird as you want. Just type in the Zoom chat. Yes, please. Just type in the Zoom chat as you just did. So your question, no, we're not using Mentimeter. This is StreamAlive. And And quick introduction, that's maybe a great segue. I'm Lux Narayan, friends call me Lux. And the question is, why did you join us today? So it's a question that you see up there. Why did you join this session? So the solution, yes, thank you, Tina. It's StreamAlive. I'm the CEO and a co-founder at the company. And we're using StreamAlive to visualize a chat, how to introduce yourself. And Manish, knowing you, that's a difficult thing for you. I'll tell you right away with the many hats that you wear. But then a lot of us wear a lot of hats. I know about some of you, but I'm sure everyone wears a lot of hats. So, we totally dig it, but we are absolutely biased, of course. But why did you join the session, folks? So I want to make sure that we cover anything that's come up with. So how do you introduce yourself? We absolutely are going to be covering that. StreamAlive, yes, we are going to be using StreamAlive to give everyone a voice, because I want this to be a conversation, not a monologue. Our central thesis is the world has had enough of monologues. We need a lot more dialogues. Oh, my favorite word, serendipity. Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. How do you wear so many hats? A small head helps, yes, but how do you wear many hats? Absolutely, you're going to be covering that as well. I think there are ways we can slice and dice it. Glad for that as well. All right, I'm going to just stop this. We just have a little more, maybe I think one or two more questions to ask you. Ravana, oh God. Okay, for those who are not familiar, Ravana is, depending on whom you ask, is a mythological demon god from Hindu mythology, who is rumored to have had 10 heads. So that's the inside joke on the hats, if you're wondering why people are talking hats and Ravana and stuff. So we've got some friends in the room as well, and they're known for derailing conversations. Just bear with them. They're good folks. Yeah, so you're a trainer, use Mentimeter. Absolutely, that's a big thing. Happy to have a side conversation with you about StreamAlive and how it makes it absolutely frictionless for the audience, and we can have that conversation separately. Right? Super. Again, just curious and very specific. What do you do for work? If you had to describe what you do for work in maximum of 2 words, please try and keep it within a word or two. I know it might be a little difficult for some of you, but hey, we're kind of going from the easy to the more difficult, right? I mean, where you're joining from is easy. What do you do for work? GovCon analytics. I don't think we've ever seen that answer before. So thank you for that. I build software, radical honesty. I think we certainly need a lot more of that in the world. Listen and think. You know, it's fascinating when Seth Godin is asked what he does. Apparently, his answer is, I think, pretty interesting. He says, I observe people, or I observe things, sorry. All right. Oh, by the way, as you probably guessed from the colors and the falling things, there are a lot of fans of Tetris in our team at StreamAlive. So if you have 4 rows, you're going to see some of them disappear. If you want to get that full Tetris experience, I need more answers. And if you want to give more than one answer, that's perfectly fine. Some of you I know for a fact wear multiple hats even at work. Yes, many hats, stay useful or stay curious. Absolutely. Dabbling in language. Gosh, I think we should start doing these as 2-hour sessions with a break and just, listen to all these amazing stories from people. I like to think of these sessions as not just one where, a presenter, in this case, me, is talking to people. It really needs to be one where we're having different modes of conversation. And that's kind of what we're trying to do over here. Just let all of you see who's in the room. You obviously, everyone doesn't know everyone. I don't know everyone who's in the room today, but we get a sense of the kind of, variety that we have over here. I'm pretty sure if you're not that person in GovCon and analytics that never came to your head, and, life designer, some of you might be curious about what that is or might have a preconceived notion of what it is, which may be right or wrong, but it's just beautiful to see the kind of variety we have in just one little small room over facilitate magic. That's beautiful. Okay. What we're trying to do here is, like I said, not just have a one-way conversation, which is not the objective. I don't want to be just talk. I want an exchange of ideas between all of us. I want to hear everyone, which is kind of what we're trying to do all this time in terms of having a 2-way pathway of conversation going to the extent possible. And also for folks to, connect with each other. So I'm just going to rewind back a bit, and we saw some amazing answers over here. So some of you, a lot of these sessions go with, hey, please do not promote what you do and, keep it to theme and stuff. Personally, I'm not a fan of that. If you have a website or a LinkedIn profile or a Twitter handle that you'd love for people to look at to understand how you do life designing or radical honesty or stuff, please, please, please feel free to share it in the chat. Just to tell you what we're going to be doing with it, I leave so many Zoom meetings with, oh shit, there were some amazing links in that conversation that I missed out on. And we will not miss a single link over here. We have a feature in StreamAlive called Link Library that reads the chat, automatically extracts anything that smells like a link, automatically filters it into different buckets. So if it's a link, StreamAlive will find it. So radical everything. Thank you for sharing that, Nirupa. Nirupa, you got Salons for Life as well. And you've got some others. We call them dexteritysolutions.co.uk. Again, folks, at the end of this, we'll be sending a sort of link to this document. So all of you can follow the work that all the amazing people in this room are doing over here, right? So you know about StreamAlive, you can check us out at streamalive.com. Oh, thank you, Tina, for putting StreamAlive as well. Tina is a co-founder at StreamAlive, so that's why. But folks, put the spotlight on. I mean, we need more spotlights. We need all of us to shine. We need everyone to connect with everyone, we need to create that fertile ground for serendipity, which is kind of what we're doing over here. And besides, sniffing the chat for links, StreamAlive is also going to be sniffing the chat for questions. So if there are any questions, some of which are helpful because they have a question mark at the end of it, StreamAlive will automatically extract it from the chat. I'm just going to cover all the questions you have so far. Reina, I should have mentioned that, I am in a place called Basking Ridge in New Jersey. Mine is all over the world. That absolutely counts. How do we participate in the chat that is displayed? John, I think I saw some responses from you after that. You're participating in the chat exactly as you're doing right now. That's perfect. No, we're not using Mentimeter. I think it's a beautiful piece of software. StreamAlive makes it absolutely frictionless for the audience, but we're familiar with Mentimeter. So it's not Mentimeter, it's StreamAlive. You wear many hats, small head, radical honesty. And Reina, you shared the link there as well. Find my podcast. Thank you, John. That podcast is also going to be in the link library. In fact, I think just to go back there once to make sure this is working. By the way, I'm shamelessly using all of you for testing as well. You put a YouTube link, so it should have been captured on YouTube. There it is. So that's there in a YouTube link. So folks, StreamAlive will auto-categorize all the beautiful knowledge that you're putting out there in the chat. So keep it coming. If you haven't typed your link yet, you can do it anytime. And by the way, questions, ask them anytime in the chat. Okay. And we will intermittently keep jumping into questions. When I'm at a loss for words and don't know what to say, I might just jump into questions to see if there's anything there. So help me out and keep putting any questions that you have over there. I'm just going to remove some of these just to give it some space. And okay, let's keep that. And the links are captured there. So I'm going to remove it here because they're in the link library. Awesome. So you hopefully got a flavor of how you're going to be running this session here. I have one question for you directly in line with the theme of what we're talking today, right? I mean, this is a question that we've been asked so often. So, right? So what do you do? And during the pandemic, we were given a little bit of a break because we weren't asked that question too often because the opportunity for serendipitous connections at a coffee shop, at a bar, at somewhere outside obviously reduced. But here we are, thankfully, on the other end of that. And therefore, my assumption is we're seeing a lot more of, oh, so what do you do? Enthusiastic questions. I would love to know how you usually answer. And by the way, there's no right answer or wrong answer. My answer, I'm going to put it in the chat, is number one. I usually answer it with what I do for my profession. And if your answer includes a combination of these, maybe you talk about your profession and you talk about your family, just type the number one in the chat. And then after that, type the number two in the chat. So again, everything is through the chat. Just participate in the chat. I'm sure you're familiar with polls, but these are polls that dance based on the kind of answers we're seeing. Your job, your profession, where you're from, absolutely. Education. I know we have a couple of 20-somethings here in the room today. I'm curious if you use your education because that's typically something people do when they're fresh out of college and a few years after. So don't worry, it's not a wrong answer. If that's something you talk about, please put that in the chat. Family, absolutely. We've got about a quarter of you saying something else. I'm actually going to stop this poll. If you haven't put your answer there, this is your last chance. If any of those folks, maybe call out one, or if time permits, I'm just keeping an eye on the clock because I'm notoriously famous for running over time. But if time permits, I'd love for actually one and maybe two of you to just share what you do when you say, what you mean when you say something else. So if you just put your hand up, if you're willing to do that, if you type the answer, you can either put your physical hand up there or you can use the hand up icon. Tina, do you mind unmuting someone on that? Okay, Colin's got a physical hand, so I'm actually going to go with Colin first and then Nirupa, because, hey, give me a physical hand over a digital one anytime. Sorry, Nirupa.
Yeah, hi. I'll ask the question, when was the last time you felt really heard? You know, I'll start with saying I'm Colin, of course, but my question comes very quickly. When was the last time you felt really heard?
What are some of the answers you've gotten for that question, Colin, these few days?
The quite common is I get, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, yesterday when I was with my daughter, but one lady really struggled and she just went, gosh, it's a good few years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you could see just by the response how emotional she started to get about it. We need to feel heard.
I couldn't agree more, sir. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Nirupa, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you for having us here. My one short answer is, one line is, if someone asks me, what do you do? I answer in the present participle, which is designing my work life and my life work. And I will say that it wasn't this succinct. 5 years ago, this question really frustrated me because, as you know, Lux, I left a corporate career, and that in-between period where you're forming and building something new, and it might be multiple things. For me, it's multiple things. That in-between place is a very vulnerable place, and it's hard to kind of capture that in a very reduced question, which is, what do you do? And also, I think your own narrative of when you're in a sabbatical creative chapter 2 of your work, the narrative takes some time to evolve, you know, and it's literally taken me 6 years. And this is a first draft.
All the best. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but I know you're on to chapter 3, and all the best with that. And like I think as I told you recently, like Thor and Rocky, part 3 is usually the best. So good luck with that. Reina, you had your physical and your digital hands up. So we saw 3 hands there. So please, we got a.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for having us. I don't frequently get the what do you do question, which is kind of interesting. It's not the first question. It's like the third question I get. I usually get a question about my accent first, and then disbelief that I'm Indian, so I have to defend that. And then it's like, what do you do? Because no one can make sense of me, and they're trying to make sense of me. And to that question, I usually answer some combination of about what or with what, right? What do I do with what, about what? And that can spark a conversation about what we mean with this question, why we feel like we ask this question around culture, right? I'm a diasporic person, so where is it appropriate to ask this question, etc. So I'm really looking for connection and conversation. So whatever I can improvise in the moment that is not the standard answer is what I will answer.
Thank you. And by the way, Reina, Colin, and Nirupa, I should have pinged you folks earlier if I knew that if we had connected earlier and asked you to write some of the slides that we're going to go through, because I couldn't agree more. I mean, you talked about being succinct, we talked about catalyzing conversation, we talked about, Colin, asking questions that people don't expect that makes them stop, think, and are pretty important. I mean, everyone needs to be heard. And all of these, in some form or fashion, are things we're trying to capture in some ways. And thank you for adding so much color to it. Beautiful. Right, folks. Vamsi, we have one more hand.
Yeah. So if it's a work situation, obviously I'll try, and I work for a relatively unknown company now, so I try to drop in a bait for them to ask me the next question. So let's say I work for the biggest chocolate company in the world, but you don't know the name. So just a bait for them to ask the next question. But if it's a semi-work or more personal situation, it's obviously I probably reveal a little more about myself. I mean, I'm not trying to hide. I would just say I've stepped off the corporate treadmill. I'm trying to achieve a better balance and so on and so forth, which I guess lands well from a authenticity perspective or trust, inspiring trust in the others.
I love it. I love that answer you shared also in terms of the biggest chocolate company that you don't know, because that catalyzes conversation so much, right? And it's also you're making it playful. You're making it almost like a little quiz and a question. I mean, the person is it this? Is it that? They're wondering, should I volunteer? Should I ask you? It's already setting itself for conversation, even if it's within a corporate context. And absolutely love this. I'm also feeling very mighty chuffed because when we come to one of the slides at the end, I've got 3 icons. I'm kind of preempting myself over here, which I think encapsulates some of the things you folks have shared in some form or fashion, not all of it, but some parts of it. And this is also the, building anticipation bit. So we're going to wait till the end to see that. Yeah. All right. Thank you, folks. And for those who just joined us, thank you for being with us. We are running an interactive session. We had a lot of participation all this time. So if you just joined us, you might have missed some of that. But
Lux, we have 2 more hand raised.
hey, let's do it.
Yeah.
I'll speak faster after this. I love to hear people more than people hear me speak. So if you can do all the hand raises, I would love to. Is that Sanjay? I'm going to stop my screen. Sanjay, good to have you, sir.
You have to unmute yourself, Sanjay.
Sorry. Hi, Lux.
Hey.
In fact, I remember your book, and your book recommended that why should you always respond with what you're doing, profession, etc. And I tried it for a while, or at least when I was reading the book, and soon after to try to answer it in a different way. What are the interests, or what else do I do? But unfortunately, the habit didn't last for too long, and I've gone back to number 1 in terms of answering with the professional and title and all that. But I am intrigued by this question because in some time, this is going to change. I'm reaching a point where I may not be doing the typical profession. So I'm intrigued. I'm here because I want to figure that when I'm doing something different with my time, what might be a good thing to answer this question with. And so I really look forward to what's coming in the rest of the session, because I'm going to need it.
I couldn't agree more with everything you said, Sanjay. And I'm ashamed to admit in that context that after writing the book in this case, for those who are not familiar, is I took a break from work in the conventional sense sometime in 2020 during the pandemic. Wrote a book. I'll give you the TLDR version of it down the line. It's called Name, Place, Animal, Thing, and it kind of catalyzed the context for today's conversation. And after that, it helped that I was not working and I was between jobs, so I had to give different answers, and people are asking me. Plus, hardly anyone was asking me because we were in the middle of a global pandemic. But after that, when I got back into startup life, there's this desire to say what you're doing as a company, and that kind of suddenly became my answer. And I revisited it a few months back, and I said, "Oh my God, I mean, I'm not drinking my, I'm not following what I advocate," and then changed it, and that became the context of what we're doing. So, I mean, you're not the only one, my friend. It's me as well. We'll touch upon that as well. I think we have. There are some easier ways to do it, which I wish I'd included in the book now. But hey, you live and learn, right? Also, did you have some other hands, Tina? Did you say, or if not, cool. You're gonna move on. Yeah, thank you so much, folks, for sharing all that. It's beautiful. All right, so we'll leave you the job. Lemme tell you how I answer the question, or rather how I used to answer the question till a couple of months ago. I would say, hey, I'm, Lux Narayan, and that's pronounced in about 18 different ways here in the States. So my friends call me Lux, please call me Lux. I'm the CEO and co-founder at a company called StreamAlive, and we help make live sessions a lot more interactive and active by giving the audience a voice. We believe that presentations and sessions need to be dialogues, not monologues. I would give that entire spiel, right? Which is not wrong. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not proud of it. But I think there are better ways of doing it, and I think I do it better in the last couple of months. Right? Where it stems from, in my opinion, is a desire to give a complete answer. we want to give this, this is my circle. This is kind of what, and there is also a perception about the other person. If it's someone who is a friend of my mom, for example, I might make a perhaps wrong assumption that this is a person who doesn't know about SaaS companies, and therefore I need to explain it in a bit of a different context. Or if it's someone who there's a different power equation with someone you think might be a customer for what you do, or might be someone who might invest in you, you might have a bit of a different dynamic in terms of how you answer the question, right? Because you want to make sure that you have that opportunity to say everything that you have. And my personal belief is one of the worst, I'm a fan of analogies and metaphors, and I think one of the worst analogies we've had in the world is this 2-word term called the elevator pitch. I don't know about you, but I've never seen anyone pitch or be pitched in an elevator. It would be pretty creepy if you had other people in the elevator, and if it's two, it would still be creepy. So the word elevator pitch to me is just a weird term, but it's used so much that we all believe we've got to give our elevator pitches, right? I think it needs to be more of escalator conversations, where you're walking up an escalator with somebody, and maybe they're on the upper rung and you're on the lower one, and you're just having a chat with them and just exchanging stuff, and then you continue the conversation after you reach whichever floor you're going on. Or if you want to be a little more healthy, take the stairs. But you get the idea, right? We are all trying to give this elevator pitch, and we're all basically trying to capture these things. Once you mentioned the context of work, right? I mean, I've never worked for a company with more than 1,000 people for more than 6 months of my life, so I'm not very familiar with big company culture. In fact, more than 100 people for that matter. And therefore, I assume that when you're in a big company, let's say it's a company event where you have 2,000 people from your company, and you say, I work for HSBC, it would be pretty weird because everybody in the room works for HSBC. So you would obviously tweak it in terms of which division, which country, and things like that. But more often than not, we tend to talk about our work. We tend to talk about origins. We tend to talk about life stage, especially with something recent. I got recently married, had a kid. Those kind of things, they impact life stage, and therefore, depending on when you're having the conversation, might dominate it. If you're at an alumni event, obviously you lead with which batch you graduated from, or if you're at a work event, it's department. So there is context for it. We're not going to talk about those individual contexts. All of us know that you got to bring that layer on when you have that. But in a generic context, we tend to talk about work or sometimes our origins. I mean, Raina, you talked about people trying to figure out from your accent where you're from. All of us, everyone tries to figure out, right? I mean, where is this person originally from? Where are they in? We try to geo-identify and culture identify people, right or wrong. But those enter the conversation, obviously. I suggest that we stop thinking about it as circles. And this is probably I have a mechanical engineering degree. I haven't put it to much use. I think there's a maximum put it to use by putting an image of gears over here. But there are so many gears in all of us. There are so many teeth. There's that expression, right? Cutting one's teeth in different activities and different things. There are things you've done, some things that we continue to do. And I think that's really the visual metaphor we should be going for in terms of, okay, you have all these different gears, and some of them might sync with people. Some of them might sync in the past. Some might think in the future. You're trying to see how many of these are relevant in the conversation that you're having at that point in time. I just want us to rewind back a little bit to when we were kids. And if you remember, when someone asked you, they wouldn't ask you, so what do you do? That would be pretty funny if someone asked you that when you were in kindergarten. They probably asked you, who are you, right? And you'd say, I'm Lakshman, I'm in class 3D. And I think my favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle is Raphael. You'd identify by colors and characters and cartoons, and I collect stamps or something like that, right? So those are things that we would identify because our class and our hobbies would kind of identify us. And then college happens, and those take the form of sports and culturals. You're identified by which dorm, or as we call it in India, hostel you belong to, which branch of engineering or medicine or arts or commerce or whatever you study it is. Are you a freshman? Are you a sophomore? Are you a junior or senior? What sport are you into? What culturals are you into? And those dominate the conversation when we meet someone in the local coffee shop on campus. And then life happens. And the cartoons and characters are obviously replaced by things like Netflix and shows and celebrities. And did you watch Barbie first or Oppenheimer, or did you watch both at the same time? Or, oh gosh, you haven't watched either? Oh my God, and things like that. and work, obviously. And then we've got the wherewithal to travel to places, and therefore that enters a conversation. The restaurant we went to, the place we went to, or we hope to go to, or which holiday we took recently, and that becomes a canvas for conversation. I want you to think for a second, and you know, not putting my friends in the room on the spot, but I know there are different ways in which I would describe you to others if I were talking about you. If you're not in the room and a friend of yours is referring to you, right? Hey, do you know Colin? And what are words they may use to describe you? Or it doesn't have to be a word, it can be a sentence, it can be, how do you think people describe you? I mean, it could be things you do, it could be attributes you carry, it could be your approach to life, it could be the work you do, of course. In fact, that might be one of the first things that people say, but it could be the fact that you're talkative, you're loyal. I'm going to challenge you to push yourself and try to pull as many dimensions to that as you can. So there are character attributes, and these are great because they absolutely enter the lexicon when we describe people to others. Oh, this is an amazing guy. It's really kind and patient and curious, keeps doing something. Cardiothoracic surgeon of the psyche. Oh, wow. Okay. That crazy nonconformist. All right. I wish I could have set the settings to show whose name it is, but I'm enjoying playing a guessing game over here, and I'm sure some of them have no things. I haven't seen any job description so far, which is fascinating. Whoa, glitter punk aesthetic. Okay. Folks, keep these in mind. If we have time at the end, I'd love to understand some of these as we go forward. Just looking at the time again, like I said, I'm going to respect everyone's time over here and try to keep it within time. But wow. If anyone wishes to keep the questions going, we'll maybe take a couple, and forgive me if we don't call you out. But if anyone wants to explain something that isn't very, very intuitive over here, I would love to know a little bit more about it. Tina, I'm going to keep the screen going, so if you don't mind looking at the gallery to see if anyone's hand is up, and they can actually talk as we have the other answers coming on. So if you wish to just put your digital, physical extra points, if like Reina, you do both. For folks who just joined us, you're just typing in the chat, and we're just getting a sense of who's in the room. And the part you missed is this is not a presentation, it's a conversation. It's all of us conversing with each other, knowing that we have forces of nature which are slightly mad, hyper communicators, rare birds, and the finest purveyor of the glitter punk aesthetic. Feel free to raise your hand if you would like to explain anything over here that you think. If you don't, that's fine too. I mean, no pressure. Yeah. Reina, you got your hand up, I think. Tina, can you unmute Reina, please? Hey, Payal, thanks for joining us.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Oh, there we go. You said my description a couple of times, so I felt compelled to raise my hand.
Which one was that?
Friends, I have very colorful friends, and the finest purveyor of the glitter punk aesthetic was something a very intellectual and articulate friend used for me in an introduction, in a professional introduction to somebody else. So I kept that one. What it means is up to anyone's guess, but everything about my presentation sometimes feels like a business card in itself. I don't carry business cards. People just kind of see me and we end up speaking. So there's a presence, I think, and a presence and a presentation that's feels very natural to me at this point, that simply invites conversation. So lots of breaking of norms. There's a punky aspect, but there's also a shiny aspect. And it's a very like, you know, breaking rank is my favorite thing to do. And people I'm around really appreciate that. So that's kind of, I think, where that came from.
Thank you. That's beautiful. It's such a fertile ground for conversation, and I mean, I mentioned it a couple of times, and that tells you the fact that it certainly catalyzes curiosity, right? Did we have one more hand up? I thought I saw one more. If your hand came up and went down and you want to put it up, just do it again, or we can. Cool. Thank you, folks. That was, I'm just going to scroll through this so you look at it again. That's a lot of amazing answers. Coca-Cola, and I think that's Vamsi, who worked in Coca-Cola for a pretty long time in some very senior roles across the globe. And yes, absolutely, Vamsi, that's certainly something people would use when they describe you, in addition to a lot of other good words. Gosh, these are some amazing words here, and I really wish and hope people use some of them when they describe me to their friends. I'm going to veer a little towards, very functional things at my end and just share with you some dimensions of my life that tend to be a little more salient. Startups have been a large part of my life. I've been a startup founder for the last 18 years now, and before that did a stint as well. So people look at me as a startup person, and that tends to be one part of how they talk about it. I once did a talk on obituaries, which went on the TED stage, and therefore that got a fair amount of visibility. So that tends to be, since it's in the public domain, a little more visible. My book journey, I harassed each and every one of my friends to buy it, read it, review it, and therefore that's more salient than they might like. I love comedy, and I don't know if you folks saw some of the loading screens in StreamAlive, but each and every one has at least one pun. That's part of the product brief. We have comedy and weird stuff happening on every screen, and comedy is a big part of my life, and that's something people. I get flattered when people ask me, "Hey, when are you doing your next comedy set?" And my answer always is sometime later this year. So hopefully that will happen. What to me personally is beautiful, and we talked about serendipity a little earlier. Is how all of these fostered, the room for serendipity. My previous journey with my startup, a company called Unmetric, which I was with till 2020, got acquired in the end of 2019. After that was when I took a break for various personal and professional reasons, which is when wrote the book Name, Place, Animal, Thing. And we'll talk a little bit about the book down the line, because the fundamental thesis on the book is, I think we need better answers to, so what do you do, right? So it's very intrinsically related with what we're talking about today. But the book was born as a, I forget the name. I think it's called Pecha something. The talks where you have about 15 slides in 15 seconds each. And I did one of those at some event, and ended up talking about something that evolved into a longer talk that then became the book. So I never saw it coming, but that's how it happened. My life at Unmetric was analyzing data. And I have some might call a morbid hobby, but I love reading the obituaries, and I still do. I have a pile on my desk here as well. I read them from every single day in whichever country I'm in whichever local newspaper it comes in. And my love for analytics and obituaries is what led to the talk. And I just thought we should infuse humor into what would otherwise be seen as a pretty sad topic, and found that I was doing a fair amount of humor in that talk. And once I did that, I got the guts to do stand-up comedy, which is really the toughest speaking thing I've ever done. So to some extent, I mean, I'm sure you can also correlate the different dimensions that you shared. Everything is kind of related in ways that you can't anticipate when you do these different things, right? And they keep flowing to and fro. So StreamAlive was actually born from writing Name, Place, Animal, Thing, because I didn't know the first thing about writing a book when I wrote the book. Some of you might read the book and say, I still don't know the first thing about writing a book, but keeping that aside, I attended 6 courses on how to write, edit, and market a book. And these were delivered over 56 live sessions on Zoom, YouTube Live, and different platforms. And that's where I saw that there were more monologues than I care to remember. And each of those were actually things that could have very beautifully been dialogues. And that was the initial seed for my co-founders and me to kick off and start what is now StreamAlive, right? That whole love for comedy finds its way into every single screen that we have in the product. And it's funny, sometimes these things kind of interact in ways you never anticipate. Like this connection between TED and StreamAlive actually happened in this place. I'm a fan of diners, and we'll talk about that a little bit down the line. I know of at least one other person who's a fan of diners in this conversation today. But I was at a diner 3 weeks ago, met this person I had first met during through TED. And he introduced me to somebody else, and we just got chatting about, so what do you do? And we found, I mean, besides work, we found a whole bunch of connections, from a love for Bollywood and Amitabh Bachchan, who's India's biggest actor, to a whole bunch of other things. And at the end of the conversation, this person actually ended up being an investor in StreamAlive, which wasn't my intent. I didn't even know I was meeting this person. Right? So that's a thing that I had to add just from what happened 3 weeks ago. Right? So the point is, I mean, so many of these became fertile grounds for connections that I could have, I mean, they make total sense in the rearview mirror right now, but I'd be lying if I say I saw any of them coming. Switching gears, quite literally, I want to touch upon the part on the bottom right, which is honestly a pet peeve of mine. I think we've got so many things to consume now, whether it's movies, whether it's shows, and there's so much of FOMO around it in terms of whether it's Barbenheimer or Barbie or the latest show on Netflix, and I watch a lot, so I should know. I keep saying this, especially in the class, in the sessions I do with folks who are fresh out of college, but I think it applies to each and every one of us. We're dangerously at risk of moving. We already moved to some extent from what we were as kids, where we used to make things and do things with our hands and with other stuff and things in terms of creating and doing and writing, to very comfortably and easily filling that time with consuming, watching, and reading. Again, not to say there's anything wrong with it, but I think we need to be conscious of that move and just push ourselves a little bit to move from consuming, watching, and reading into creating, doing, and writing, because the world certainly needs more creators and makers. Right. Which is actually a good segue into the thesis on the book. So at the risk of cannibalizing my own sales, I'm going to give you the TLDR version of the book in the next 4 slides, and use that as a catalyst to encourage you to share some stuff about you as well, using this lens, right? So the book is, if you read books like Monk Who Sold His Ferrari and Jonathan Livingston Seagull and some of the others, it's written in the style of an allegory. Don't ask me why, but for someone writing his first book, I decided to write fiction and non-fiction at the same time. It's just a format that I personally love, and this was more of a labor of love. And the book is based on a childhood game which goes by the name of Name, Place, Animal, Thing. So quick question on that first. If you can just let me know in the chat if you ever played the game. So I mean, yes, sometimes. And I'm just going to delete that message there. I think that was a personal message to me. Why? Yes, no, please go on. Yes. Yes, in class. I'm happy to see some no's as well. Don't remember. Perfectly fine too. Yes, in class. Isn't it amazing how many iterations of the word yes we have? It's beautiful. Yes in class, yes in school. It's funny you mentioned yes in class, because in the book we talk about how the protagonist first played the game in school and class, and it brought back and triggered a whole bunch of childhood memories. But for those who are not familiar, if you had an extra 20 minutes, I would actually, and if you have time in the end, if you want to play Name, Place, Animal, Thing, we can by all means play Name, Place, Animal, Thing. But here's how the game goes, right? You have someone who recites the alphabet as fast as they can, and in their heads typically, but they're going A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q. And when they go to Z, they go back to A and they continue again. And you have someone who says start, which is when the other person goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G in their head. And then the person says stop, hopefully soon. And then the person says J, for example, right? Everyone takes their pen and paper, and they are supposed to, in the next minute, write a name, write a place, like you can see Jake, Japan, write an animal, a jackal, and a thing, which can be a jacket and stuff like that, right? If it was S, you can see the answers over there. So you get the idea. What happens is, after that, everyone shows their hand or their answers or their papers, so to speak. And if they had an answer that was totally unique, that nobody else had written, they would get 10 points for it. But if I wrote Japan and Colin wrote Japan as well in his place, then both Colin and I would get 5 points each. but somebody else who wrote Jupiter would get 10 points unless somebody else was also thought they were clever and wrote Jupiter, in which case both of them would get 5 points. So you get the idea, right? You have to think of something that starts with that letter, and ideally something that you think nobody else would have thought about. So I always thought it was a beautiful game because it forced us to think outside our bubble. As someone of Indian origin, my natural inclination when it comes to a name would be something like a Jagannathan or something else, or people I know like Joe, and not go outside of it. But I know that others might put that same name because we have the same friends, and I want to put something that nobody else would. So you might even invent a name, and it teaches you that no name is strange. It might sound different or unfamiliar to you, but it's not strange. There is someone in the world with that name. Places, you think of a place and you can't think of any other place with a J, and then suddenly you see the others' answers and says, "Oof, why did I think of that?" And it's crazy. It happens with thing, right? You see jacket. I mean, quick, think of a thing in your head with the letter J. Let's think of a thing with the letter J. I'm just going to play one part of name, place, animal thing. Sorry, I'm going off script over here. Thing. No, I'm going to make it tough for you. Actually, you saw we discussed J too much. With the letter P. I think it's good to embrace our playful selves. And please don't put your answer after you see others' answers. Put the first name that comes to your mind, okay? Trombone, tambourine, close, but no cigar. Oh my God, thermodynamic, something, okay. As you can see, we have some engineers in the room, and I think the gears kind of got it going for them. We have a couple of trunks, which is why I think, and trunk and trumpet seem to be bigger. So those people who wrote trunk and trumpet, you get 5 points. Everybody else gets 10 points, right? But isn't it beautiful? You go in a certain line of thinking, and then you see the words that you could have thought of but didn't think of, and it says, "Oh, I should have thought of that," and stuff like that. And I think that is really the most beautiful part of the game for me, the fact that it conjured up all these different worlds that we otherwise would have missed out on, right? So that and that's why I used the game, or rather name, place, animal, thing as a metaphor for things that we should be and you know how we should be approaching life in general. So here's a TL too long didn't read version of the book. It starts with thing. And there's a mental model for how we should be thinking of creating things. We should be thinking of course, you know, there are two axes on that. Physical and virtual are the ends of one axis, and the other one is the amount of prior knowledge, which is what PK stands for, no prior knowledge to lots of prior knowledge. So for example, a physical thing where I have some prior knowledge is origami, which I've done as a child. I do it sometimes when I want to de-stress, and therefore it would fall in the top right quadrant, right? Oops, I think I just lost something there. It's never a good presentation if everything goes smoothly. So we're just going to. I'm going to try reconnecting over here. Otherwise, bear with me a second, folks, as I just go to a backup. Yeah. I think StreamAlive thought that I was talking too much. So. Let's see if it works second time. No. Okay, we're all friends here. I think it's good to have a bit of snafus. Let's just try it again. Can someone share the link for the Zoom meeting with me in the chat, please? Just save me the trouble of copying it. And thank you for your patience, folks. I'm aware of the fact that we have. Thank you.
Hey, just quickly, while you're showing this, so this is how somebody would use StreamAlive?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
I think Lux did this to show how StreamAlive can be used.
I wish I could take credit for that.
I think
So
this
yes,
is intentional.
So I baited you folks to give you a full demo of how to use StreamAlive. Yes. So I'm attaching what we call a run-off show, which is that sequence of slides and interactions that I had prepared for today. And we're going to try it one more time. Oh, we have two StreamAlive bots in the meeting now.
Oh, it's okay. It's gone the other.
More the merrier. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Tina, can you admit the bot, please?
That's it.
Thank you. Okay, fingers crossed. No, we have a bug over here. So let's switch gears over here. Sorry about that, folks. We pushed a new version yesterday, and that might have polluted things a little bit, but I'm going to always keep a backup. Let's go with this. Again, thank you for your patience. Murphy's Law at its best. And let's jump here. Got quite a few slides. Wow, we covered a fair amount of ground over there. Okay. So you're going to do it sans interactivity. We had a couple more things I wanted to get your thing on, but by the way, we're going to be doing this workshop literally every month. So if you want the full experience, do join us again in future. But coming back on track here, I think we forget the physical part of it. We're using our fingers more often than not for typing on keyboards, and that's perfectly fine. But it's good to embrace that act of making something, the tactile feeling of whether it's molding clay, folding paper, doing something, woodwork, whatever. And I think it's an important thing for all of us to stay connected with, right? So that's the thing about Think, have this mental model around physical and virtual and things you're familiar with and things you're not. Animal is, again, it's about three things: body, breath, and brain. We tend to think about the fast parts of it, which is exercise, intense things, thinking, working, and the gist of that part of it is giving a little more time to the slow parts of it as well. Just rushing through in the interest of time. Travel, we tend to talk more about traveling to places far away, places that cost money, which is the top right quadrant, which is expensive and far. But I think we need to give a lot of attention also to traveling, what I like to call near and narrow, not just far and wide, which is almost the diametric opposite quadrant, which is not too expensive, the lower thing on the dollar, and nearby. To me personally, that is diners. I love visiting a diner literally once at least every 2 weeks. And I've had some fascinating conversations and seen some amazing places. I try not to repeat the same diner. I do, of course, at times, but it takes me to some very interesting places. And as you saw earlier, actually helped with closing a funding round. And I borrowed from the Ikigai model over here, where you got different intersections between what you love doing, what you can be paid for, what you're good at, and what the world needs. And each of those intersections satisfies certain things and misses out on certain things. I think the cardinal mistake a lot of us do is trying to get this intersection going in our job. And I postulate that it's almost impossible to do. I mean, some might have found it, and kudos to them, but it's very difficult to find all these 4 things in a single activity. And maybe you need multiple things to complement those. Like Sanjay, you were talking about it, where work, and then you're transitioning to a phase in life where these other activities dominate. And I think each of them fills different gaps and voids and addresses different needs. We're not going to do it using StreamAlive now for obvious reasons, but I would love for, again, just we're going to save this chat. It's a wealth of information over here. And by the way, for those of you who joined late, if you have any links you'd like to share with the tribe, just put it up over here. We will be capturing all the links and putting it up and sharing it with everyone afterwards. Just take some time and think about the names, places, animals, things that you've done in your past, that you're doing right now, and that you're doing in the future. So for example, for me, the animal thing that is in my past and in my present, I'm very, very happy to report is football, or as we call it here in the States, soccer. I used to love playing soccer as a kid. I have no clue why I stopped playing for so many years. And I started last month, and I've got a whole bunch of soccer friends I hang out with at least once a week. It helps that they go for a beer after the game, but it's just a big thing for me, and I see it in my future as well. So I use this as a template in some other visual ways as well that I'm happy to share in a separate conversation to think about as a model on how I want to, you know, have different dimensions to my own life. Right? Going back to the gears, I'm willing to bet that almost none of us in this room has really seen a gear for a very, very long time. But we felt it, right? You felt it when you change gears quite literally in a manual car, when you see that sudden rev that happens and an automatic car actually shifts gear, although you don't have to do anything about it. When you know, you switch on a blender or a mixer and you see you put it on a different speed, you feel it even if you don't really see it. You feel it in action, and I think that's really what people are looking for in a conversation. Whether it's a one-to-many conversation like this or in a one-to-one conversation where people are asking, so what do you do? They don't really remember what you told them. They remember how you made them feel. And this is a quote borrowed from the great Maya Angelou. And I think it's absolutely true, because people go off a conversation saying, wow, that is good. When you look at some of the words you used earlier, none of them were about jobs or activities or things like that. They were more about the loyal person, someone who makes you think in a certain way, and so on and so forth. People remember how you made them feel, right? And just accelerating to my answer on how I answer the question when people ask me, so what do you do? And what's changed from how I used to answer it about a couple of months back. My new answer follows a formula. And whoops. I apologize. I've got a different slide here. Folks, bear with me a second, please. As is often the case when I've opened the wrong file over here, but I've got a slide that I certainly want you to see, because that captures in 3 images. And hopefully this is the right file. Note to self, don't create 5 files with the same name. Ah, here it is. Thank you again for being patient, and there we go. You got one more app up there. You got Keynote. This is my formula for doing it. And I think a lot of you alluded to it when you with the answers that you gave right in the beginning, when I asked you to explain what you do, how you answer the question when you said something else. The first one is dimensions. I usually answer it back with a question. I literally put the person on the spot by saying, do you mean for work or outside of work? Because that automatically opens up the canvas of the conversation to not just work, but to talk about a lot of stuff beyond work, right? So very few people say just for work, or yeah, what do you do for work and everything else as well. So you're automatically getting the permission to talk about stuff beyond work, and not just for you to talk about, but to ask the other person about stuff as well. So you're almost defining the canvas of the conversation right in the beginning, saying, let's keep this multidimensional. Right? Once you talked about it, you talked about what you do for work, and then you talk about other dimensions of it. And I think it's important to cue those dimensions right in the beginning. So you set expectations, and I would like to talk about my work and hear about yours, but I would also like to talk about other things as well. And when they answer something like, oh yeah, about work and other stuff as well, I don't go with my full elevator pitch spiel. My usual answer is, oh, on work, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a co-founder at a company called StreamAlive, and stop. If the name sounds interesting enough for them, not unlike what Vamshi mentioned in terms of I work for, a chocolate company that one of the world's largest chocolate companies that you never heard of, it probably piques enough curiosity for them to ask, oh, what do you guys do? And then I get into, oh, we help presenters make sessions interactive and engaging or whatever. But everything is treated like a text message, where the objective is not to give one huge essay, but really give one pithy little thing that actually does what it's supposed to do, which is have a conversation, right? One of the other things that I find difficult personally, but I've been doing more and more is channeling what I like to call my inner Obama. And I will have to share this clip with you. This is, if you've not seen it before, it's fantastic. It's 5 straight of Obama's pauses during a speech he made. But he, to me, is a masterclass on the need to get comfortable with silence and pauses. He, of course, uses them for dramatic effect. But very often I've been guilty of in introductions and conversations, wanting to fill the gaps, wanting to make sure you complete your answer. And I think my new philosophy, which really is the 4th point on the 4th principle over here, which has translated into a lot more conversations and a lot better conversations, and is to me the biggest secret of great conversations, is actually count and make sure you listen more than you speak. So thank you, folks. I think we're exactly at the top of the hour. Happy to hang around a bit if anyone would like to chat, but want to respect the fact that everyone has stuff to do. If you want to stay in touch, those are my links, and with StreamAlive, those are the StreamAlive links for you to look at StreamAlive, take it for a free trial as well. If you're not already in touch, I would love to stay in touch and connect with all of you, and hope you join us for some of our other events. The link is there in the link tree for StreamAlive. We do an event like this every week where we teach or discuss something, get someone, either a work skill or a personal skill, or just have a conversation. We're trying to keep things fun, get a whole bunch of interesting folks in the room to share what they've learned and to kind of expand the tribe. Thank you again for joining us. Apologies for the snafus, but again, hey, that's a part of life. And my personal learning on that is keep everything else loaded in the back end. It's Keynote of things. But thank you for your patience and being with us through this. Lovely to have you. Hope to see you all again.